What's up, Whisper Nation, and welcome in to part one of the Week 8 matchup breakdowns. I am Big Travie. I'm your host, as always. You can find me on Twitter at BigTravieTFW. My co-host is the one, the only, the partner in crime, Johnny Game Time Hicks. Johnny, you can find him on Twitter at Johnny_GameTime.
Right here.
Johnny, we're going to hop into some of these Week 8 matchups already, just cruising through the year, a year that we thought maybe we wouldn't even have.
Yeah, and it's going. There have been hiccups, but certainly through Week 8, I would definitely be lying if I didn't say that I was at least like a little surprised we made it this far. I definitely think that we would have had a lot more hiccups and things like that. But keeping our fingers crossed, keeping all that going, that the good mojo for football keeps going forward, and I'm excited to dive into these matchups, Travis, for Week 8. We got a lot of good games on the slate, a lot of not so great matchups though. So as far as fantasy matchups go, so I'm excited to jump in this and take a deeper dive with you, brother.
Right on. Well, without further ado, let's get it started. We are going to preview the Thursday night matchup. The Carolina Panthers host the Atlanta Falcons. This is a 49-point over-under. We have got Carolina favored by 2.5 here. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit us with a subscribe. Hit that like button so we can continue to put out content for you each and every day. But, Johnny, we've got Carolina slightly favored in this one. They are at home. We saw this team match up a couple weeks ago in which Carolina got the best of Atlanta. And so we're here on this Atlanta side, and it seems to be that since Julio's gotten back into the lineup, since Quinn has been fired, they haven't necessarily won the games they should have won, but they have been a better, more consistent fantasy offense.
Yeah, they certainly have been a little bit more trustworthy as well. They do certainly look, from the eye test, they look better on both sides of the ball. Now, with that being said, a lot of people had picked up Matt Ryan for the last couple weeks as a streamer. I do not think that you should start Matt Ryan in this matchup. Carolina is 5th best against the opposing quarterbacks. So even though Matt Ryan seemed to be somewhat of a little bit of a bounce back over the last couple of weeks, I would not play him in this. I'm benching Matt Ryan in this game.
Do you think that more has to do with what Carolina's done as far as being a rush funnel defense? I mean, I think I'm firing up Todd Gurley with some pretty high confidence, not only just this matchup, but what he's done lately.
Yeah, so Carolina, 5th most points against the running back position. So like you talked about, it is kind of like a funnel there for running. And then Todd Gurley, I mean, we talked about this guy coming in. You know, we had our battles between Todd Gurley and David Johnson and which one you should take. And a lot of people said, I don't want either one of them. But look, at the end of the day right now, Todd Gurley is a top 10 running back. And he's number 2 in rushing attempts in all of the NFL. And he's top 6 in rushing yards with 485, Travis. So once again, you love the matchup. You're going to continue to roll out Todd Gurley until he gets injured. But I do want to make that. We're not going to talk about Brian Hill because I don't even think you should flex him in this game. But I'm telling you, Whisper Nation, do a little savvy gameplay move. If Brian Hill is on your waivers right now, certainly go pick him up, stash him on your bench, and then if anything does happen to Todd Gurley in this Thursday night game, you've got a major head start in a waiver wire ad. So Brian Hill has looked pretty good in the little bit of play that he's gotten, but not enough to say, yeah, go ahead and roll him out as a flex play in this, Travis. But definitely someone that I would go and grab and stash just for this Thursday night game. If he does nothing or Todd Gurley makes it through, you let him go and you pick up somebody else.
After a couple of games missed for Julio Jones with the hamstring injury, it seems to be that all things are right in the world for Julio and still for Calvin Ridley. Julio seems to be the consistent one that you know you're getting the yardage out of, and Calvin Ridley loves scoring touchdowns. Do you see anything different or anything to – I know you said you're hesitant on Matt Ryan, but there's no way you're benching either of these two studs, correct?
Yeah, it's going to be, I want Whisper Nation, we'll do this every so often. You're going to start your studs. Like you're going to play Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, but do temper your expectations in this game. Carolina, number 3 against wide receivers, only allowing 16.6 fantasy points per game on average to opposing wide receivers. So, temper your expectations for Julio and Calvin, but they're both beasts. They're both getting wide receiver 1 target market share over the last 2 weeks since Julio returned, both getting above 28% market share. So you're definitely rolling those guys out there.
Hayden Hurst continues to see more work in this offense, Johnny. He continues to see more usage. Is it translating enough to kind of keep him rolling out there as a streamer? Because maybe you picked him up a couple weeks ago for the Minnesota matchup, and he's actually kind of paid off in the Minnesota and the Detroit matchup. You may be thinking, I don't have to go to the streaming well if I can just keep Hurst in the lineup.
It does sound a lot better than it actually is on paper, Travis. He's seen as many targets as Russell Gage over the last 2 weeks, so that is kind of indicating that they are kind of leaving Hurst in to take more of that role. However, in this matchup, Carolina is very stout against the tight end. They are top 4 against the tight end position, so I would sit Hayden Hurst if I could this week.
Yeah, in week 5 when they played Carolina, he had 6 targets, 2 catches, only 8 yards in that game. So
yeah,
backs up what you're seeing in the numbers there. All right, on the other side, that Carolina offense, Johnny, we've got Teddy Bridgewater leading the way. He had a little bit of a revenge game against the Saints last week where he looked pretty solid. But he is now facing an Atlanta defense that is the best to face as a fantasy quarterback. He'll be leading that attack this weekend or this Thursday.
Yeah, you're definitely contrary to the Matt Ryan benching and saying you need to bench him. I would start Teddy Bridgewater in this matchup, or I would stream him if I needed to. You love it against Atlanta. You're always starting your quarterbacks against Atlanta.
And that has a lot to do with the weapons he's throwing to, right? DJ Moore, Robby Anderson, even Curtis Samuel getting in the mix last week. How do you see these pass catchers shaking out, particularly against Atlanta?
So DJ Moore and Robby Anderson, both of these guys have been studs throughout the season. Ironic, we've been battling back and forth and questioning who the, 1A is, alpha dog here between the two. And for weeks we have just said, and I do believe it's the right answer, that it doesn't matter. You want both of these guys because they're both getting wide receiver, very similar to Atlanta. They're both getting wide receiver 1 target market share. DJ Moore over the last 2 weeks, though, has began to emerge as the number 1 target there, getting 32% market share. But, Robby Anderson isn't too far behind. He's still getting 26% market share over the last 2 weeks. So I'm rolling both of them out because Atlanta is giving up the 5th most points to opposing wide receivers this week or this year with 29.6, Travis. So give me some of those DJ Moore and Robby Anderson shares.
Does that put Curtis Samuel on the radar for you? I mean, excuse me. In PPR formats, he scored over 15 points last week against New Orleans. 5 or more targets in his last 2 games. Any interest in Curtis Samuel?
In a deep league, I could see Curtis Samuel as a wide receiver 3 or flex play because, oftentimes we would say, start like Ian Thomas, a guy like Ian Thomas, because the Atlanta Falcons are horrible against the tight end position. They are number 1 in giving up points to the tight end position. And so normally we'd tell you, like, whatever tight end, like, throw him out there. But Ian Thomas is not. He's playing, 70% of his snaps, but I need to go back and watch the tape for sure, but I'm almost positive they're keeping him more into block because he's only seeing about 1 to 2 targets per week. And so that indicates to me that Samuel will be more in that kind of, slot route, and they'll be moving him around. So I do think he'll get some opportunities. He should see 6 to 8 targets in this game, and then you got to cross your fingers he can make into the end zone. But if you're, a wide receiver 3, long shot, I could tell you way worse ones that you could play.
After 3 straight weeks of 20 or more points in PPR formats, Mike Davis has come crashing back to earth in the last 2 weeks, Johnny. He had a tough matchup against Chicago where he didn't really run for a high yards per carry, and then just a disappearing act, it looked like, against New Orleans here. How do you see this shaping up? We know CMC is around the corner. Obviously, by the time you're listening to this, you'll know for sure, but we don't foresee CMC being in this game. How do you think Mike Davis's maybe last act as the bell cow of this offense will go?
Yeah, so Well, my dogs, they don't they don't want it to be his last act, is what they're trying to say, I guess. No, one caveat I will say, like, yeah, Mike Davis has definitely disappointed the last 2 weeks, but he has gone up against top 12 rushing defenses the last 2 weeks. So whereas before he was going up against bottom half rushing defenses. So I do think that there are better days ahead for Mike Davis. I would play him in this matchup. It's not the best matchup. It looks better on paper with Atlanta, but Atlanta's actually they're actually 11th best against the run, but I believe that's more because they are a pass funnel as opposed to a run funnel. And so I do believe with the added receptions that Mike Davis has been adding every single week, you definitely are going to get him in your lineup still. You're still going to start him. As you said, the latest that we know as of right now, CMC shows up to practice with the red shirt, which indicates not to get hit, but then he takes it off and puts on a regular jersey. What does that mean, Basil? I don't know. But I don't think he ultimately goes in this game.
Depending on when you're listening to this video, Whisper Nation, try to make that final move for Mike Davis. Trade him now if you can with this matchup on the agenda to try and entice that league mate. Hey, you got one more good matchup with him, especially look at the RB needy teams with teams with running backs on bye. Try and get rid of Mike Davis. I know he should have a decent role, but we have seen CMC be a bell cow before, so I would trust getting rid of Davis a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.